The morning of my graduation should have felt perfect. I had dreamed about that day for years. I had pictured it during long nights in the library, during winters when my hands hurt from typing too much, during exam weeks when I ran on coffee and nerves. I had held that image in my head through every hard class and every lonely moment. In that image, I was not alone. My family was there. My mother was smiling. My little brother was joking around, but still proud of me. I could almost hear their voices in the crowd. That was the version of the day I had carried with me. My name is Claire Bennett, and on paper, that day should have been the happiest day of my life. I was graduating after years of work. I had earned the honors cord around my neck. I had ironed my gown the night before. When my speech for the student reception was folded neatly inside my bag, even though I was nervous about giving it. I had checked everything twice: my cap, my tassel, my shoes, my lipstick, my phone. When I looked in the mirror that morning, I saw someone who looked ready. What I did not see yet was how quickly a person can go from proud to invisible. I checked my phone before leaving my apartment. No new messages. Just the last one from my mother, sent late the night before. We're busy getting everything ready for today. Don't stress. Love you. I stared at it longer than I should have. The words should have comforted me. Instead, they left a small, uneasy feeling in my stomach. She had not asked what time she should arrive. She had not asked where she should park. She had not asked which side of the hall I would be walking from. But I told myself she was busy because of me. That was the easiest story to believe. Outside the graduation hall, families clustered together on the steps and sidewalks. There were flowers, balloons, cameras, handmade signs, and little kids running in circles while grandparents tried to keep up. I stood near the entrance with my gown folded around me and my diploma card in my hand, pretending I was just waiting calmly like everyone else. Really, I kept checking my phone. No calls, no texts, no sign that my family had even left the house. I typed out a message to my mother. "Where are you sitting?" Then I deleted it. I did not want to sound needy. I did not want to sound like the kind of daughter who begged people to show up. I told myself they were running late, traffic was bad, parking must be impossible. They were probably already inside. How do you admit to yourself that the people who are supposed to love you most might simply not come? Inside the hall, I took my seat with the other graduates. People around me were laughing, fixing each other's caps, taking quick selfies, whispering about which family members had traveled the farthest to be there. One girl behind me said her grandparents had flown in from another country. A guy near the aisle said his dad had taken off work for the first time in years. I smiled when people smiled at me, but it felt thin and fake. The ceremony began. The dean walked to the podium. Everyone clapped. I clapped too. Then I started scanning the audience row by row. I looked for my mother's bright red coat because she always wore it when she wanted to be noticed. I looked for my brother Ethan's dark curly hair. I looked for my aunt, my uncle, anyone. Nothing. I kept telling myself they would come in through the side doors any minute. Maybe they were in the restroom. Maybe they got stuck at security. Maybe. Denial is a powerful thing. It can keep you upright even while your heart already knows the truth. Then, halfway through the speeches, my phone buzzed in my lap under my gown. For one wild second, I thought, finally. I looked down. It was not a text. It was a social media alert. My aunt had posted a photo. My mother was tagged in it. In the picture, my younger brother Ethan stood in our backyard grinning under a cheap paper banner that said, "Congratulations," in bright gold letters. He was holding a soda in one hand and a burger in the other. Around him were his friends, laughing and posing. A grill smoked in the background. Folding chairs filled the grass. My mother stood beside him, smiling wide, balancing a plate of food. The timestamp on the photo matched almost exactly the time I was sitting there in the graduation hall waiting for my name to be called. I stared at the screen until the words on it blurred. A party. They had chosen a backyard party, not even for a wedding, not for a funeral, not for some true emergency. Just a party. My brother was not graduating. He had not won anything. He was simply having people over, and my mother had decided that mattered more than watching me walk across the stage after years of work. My name was called. I stood because my body knew what to do, even though my mind had gone strangely empty. I walked across the stage. People clapped. Someone shook my hand. A camera flashed. I smiled because that is what people do in pictures like that. But the applause sounded distant, like it was coming through walls. All I could think was, if this isn't enough for her, what will ever be enough? When I stepped back down and returned to my seat, the diploma case in my hand felt heavier than it should have. Not because of what it held, but because of what it proved. I had kept my side of the deal. I had worked, I had earned it, I had shown up. She had not. After the ceremony, the whole lawn outside turned into a celebration. Parents wrapped their arms around their children. Friends posed for pictures. Flowers changed hands. People cried and laughed and shouted names across the grass. I stood at the edge of it all with my diploma case held against my chest like a shield. I called my mother. Voicemail. I called again. This time someone answered. At first I thought I had reached the wrong number because all I heard was music, laughter, and voices talking over each other. Then my mother's voice came through, far away but clear. "Everybody move in a little. I need a picture of the guest of honor." The guest of honor was not me. I ended the call before she even realized I was there. For a few seconds, I just stood still, staring at my own reflection in the black screen of my phone. My lipstick had cracked at the corners because I had been forcing too many polite smiles. The sun felt too bright. The crowd around me felt too loud. I asked myself a question I should have asked much earlier. Was I really going to keep pretending this was normal? Was I really going to stay in a life where I was always the child expected to understand, to wait, to make room, to be proud quietly while somebody else got the banner and the audience and the full version of my mother's love? On the drive back to my tiny apartment, the first sharp wave of hurt cooled into something steadier, clearer, not peace, clarity. If I stayed, I would keep living inside the same pattern. I would keep reaching for people who had already shown me, over and over, where I stood. I would keep hoping every next holiday, every next birthday, every next big moment would be the one where they finally saw me. If I left, at least the silence would be honest. By the time I parked outside my building, I was no longer asking myself if I should disappear for a while. I was planning how. I went upstairs. Zerba closed the door behind me and stood in the middle of my apartment, still wearing my graduation gown. The room looked exactly the same as it had that morning. The same books on the desk, the same dishes in the sink, the same framed photo of my family on the shelf. In it, my mother's smile looked bright and proud. My brother was leaning into her. I stood at the side, smiling too. I stared at that photo for a long time. Then I turned it face down. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and wrote a list. End lease, move savings, apply for jobs far away, change emergency contact, remove family from forms, stop waiting. The words looked almost too simple, but each one carried years inside it. As I stared at the list, one name came to mind immediately. Maya Ortiz. She had been my closest friend during school, the kind of friend who remembered deadlines, checked in before interviews, and treated every success of mine like it actually mattered. She'd moved to Seattle a year earlier for work and kept telling me I would love it there. New city, new start, new weather, new people. I sent her a message. I'm serious this time. I'm done. I need a clean break. Is Seattle still as far away as it sounds? Her reply came almost at once. Yes, and my couch is yours until you figure everything out. I laughed then, but only for a second. After that, I cried. Not loud, dramatic crying, just the kind that sneaks up on you when the day finally stops moving and the truth catches up. That night, I packed what I could fit into my car. Clothes, important papers, laptop, a few books. The one coffee mug I liked, my grandmother's old bracelet. The framed family photo stayed face down on the shelf. I slipped my key into an envelope for my landlord with a short note saying I would mail the rest of the rent and any final paperwork. Then I checked my phone one last time. Still no message from my mother asking how graduation went. No call, no sorry, nothing. So I sent her a photo. Just one. It was a picture someone had taken of me standing alone in the empty hall after the ceremony was over, cap still on, diploma case in hand, chairs folding in the background. No family around me, no celebration, no caption. I did not explain it. I did not ask where she had been. I did not say how much it hurt. I wanted the image to do what my words had never done. Tell the truth without begging. Then I muted her number, placed the phone face down on the passenger seat, and started driving. Was I running away? Maybe. But another part of me knew I was not really running. I was stepping out of a role that had been cutting into me for years. The miles stretched long and flat in front of me. With every state line I crossed, I felt something loosen. Not disappear, not heal, but loosen. Like invisible strings were snapping one by one. By the time I reached Seattle, I was exhausted in a way that went deeper than lack of sleep. But underneath the exhaustion was something I had not felt in a long time. Relief. Maya met me outside her apartment building wearing an oversized sweater and sneakers without laces, like she had rushed out the second I texted that I was close. "You actually did it," she said, pulling me into a hug. What was I supposed to do? I asked. "Stay there. and wait for her to remember I exist? Maya did not give me the usual lines people give when they do not understand. She did not say, "Family is family." She did not ask whether maybe my mother had a good reason. She did not tell me I might regret being dramatic. She just helped me carry my boxes up the narrow stairs and cleared a space in her living room for my things. That first week passed in a blur of logistics. I applied for jobs during the day and rewrote my life in forms at night. Emergency contact, Maya Ortiz. Next of kin, not applicable. Permanent address, Seattle, Washington. Every form that once held my mother's name became a small act of removal, a quiet ritual. I crossed out her information wherever I found it. Old doctor's offices, university records, banking details, insurance forms. If she was not going to show up when I truly needed her, then she did not get to stay attached to my life in every invisible, official way. 3 weeks later, after interviews and awkward waiting and too many polite rejection emails, I got an offer from a mid-sized tech company that built software for transportation systems. It was not glamorous. It was not my dream job, but it was solid, and it was mine. When the recruiter called to tell me they wanted to hire me, I almost asked if she was sure she had the right person. At work, people ask the normal questions. Where are you from? What brought you here? Do you miss home? I'm from the East Coast, I would say. I needed a fresh start. Most people nodded and moved on. A few asked more, but I had already learned how to smile politely and close the door without sounding rude. How do you explain that your mother abandoned you on your graduation day without sounding like you are making it bigger than it was? The truth is, people hear family pain in strange ways. If you are too calm, they think it could not have been that bad. If you are too emotional, they think you are unreliable. So I stopped trying to explain it to anyone who had not earned the full story. At night, lying on Maya's couch, I started going through old photos on my phone. At first, I deleted the easy ones, blurry screenshots, bad selfies, random pictures of receipts and whiteboards. Then I moved deeper. There was a photo of my mother hugging Ethan after one of his school games, her face full of pride. There was another from his 16th birthday where she had hired a food truck for the driveway. There was one from a family dinner where I stood at the end of the table while everyone looked toward him laughing at something he had said. Then there were my moments. A selfie in a bathroom mirror after I won an academic award because no one had come to take a photo. A picture of my own birthday cake on a kitchen counter with no one standing beside me. A grainy shot of me at a scholarship reception, smiling into the front camera because that was the only camera there. I did not rage delete. I did not break anything. I simply curated. I removed the photos that only kept old lies alive. I left the ones that belonged to me. The late-night study sessions, the coffee cups beside books, the city streets after class, the friends who had shown up, the professors who had believed in me. I was not pretending my family had never existed. I was refusing to keep preserving a version of them that had never truly cared for me the way I needed. Sometimes I would stop with my thumb hovering over the delete button and ask myself, if I erase this, am I lying about the past or finally telling the truth about what mattered? I kept only one family photo out in the open. It was a picture of me and my grandmother on her back porch one summer evening. Her hand was on my shoulder. She was looking at me with that quiet, steady expression she always had, as if she saw all the things I never said out loud and loved me anyway. I set that photo beside Maya's lamp. Seattle slowly became real. My own key, my own paycheck, bus rides to work, Friday takeout with Maya, coworkers who asked how my project was going and actually listened to the answer. When mornings where I woke up and did not immediately check whether my mother had finally noticed I was gone. But even while I built that new life, there was still a small part of me listening for it. For the call, the message, the moment she might finally realize what she had done. Weeks passed, then months. My mother did call. I ignored the first one, then the second, then the text began. Where are you? Why are you doing this? At least tell me you're safe. You're overreacting. Family does not disappear like this. That last message almost made me laugh. I wanted to ask, doesn't it? Doesn't family disappear exactly like this? One missed day at a time, one forgotten moment at a time, one child chosen over another until the one left behind finally gets tired of being the only person still calling it love. But I did not answer. Silence can say things words never manage. The message that finally broke through to me did not come from my mother. It came from a lawyer. The subject line read, Estate of Claire Bennett, my grandmother. I opened it with cold hands. She had died 2 weeks earlier. The words sat on the screen in a neat, formal paragraph, but they did not feel real. My grandmother had not been dramatic. She had not taken up space. She was the kind of woman who folded tissue paper and reused ribbons and wrote birthday cards in blue ink. The idea of the world simply continuing without her seemed impossible. The email explained that there would be a small funeral in my hometown. It also said there were documents attached that concerned me directly. I opened the first attachment. It was a record of an education fund my grandmother had created years earlier in my name. Not huge, but meaningful. It had been meant to help with tuition, graduation expenses, and the start of my adult life after college. She had trusted my mother to oversee it until I graduated. My breath caught. Most of the money was gone. The withdrawal dates matched moments from the last 2 years with painful clarity. My brother's car repair, his failed online business idea, a weekend trip to Miami with friends that my mother had called important for networking, random cash withdrawals. I scrolled further and found a note in my grandmother's handwriting to the lawyer, written months before graduation. Linda says Claire does not want a big fuss for commencement. She says she would rather have a small dinner later. I'm glad she knows what she wants. I had to read it 3 times before my mind accepted it. My mother had not only skipped my graduation, she had told my grandmother I did not want anyone there. She had used the money meant for me to fund my brother's life, then made my absence from her own choices sound like my preference. She had rewritten the story so fully that even the one person in the family who truly loved me believed I had chosen solitude. I closed my laptop and pressed my palms hard into my eyes. When Maya came home that evening, she found me at the kitchen table with printed pages spread around me. "What happened?" she asked quietly. I slid the papers toward her. "She told Grandma I didn't want anyone at graduation," I said. "And the fund Grandma left for me, she spent most of it on Ethan." Maya read in silence. When the longer she read, the tighter her jaw became. "What do you want to do?" she asked after a while. For once, I did not say I don't know. "I want the truth to exist somewhere outside of me," I said. "I want people to stop seeing me as the daughter who drifted away for no reason. I want her to stop controlling the story." Maya held my gaze. "Then maybe it's time to go back," she said. I booked a flight for the funeral that night, not because I wanted reconciliation, not because I had forgiven anything. I was going back to bury my grandmother and to bury, finally, the version of me my mother still thought she owned. When I landed back east, the air felt thicker than I remembered. The streets looked smaller. My hometown looked exactly the same, which somehow made me feel even stranger. I had changed so much, but the place that had shaped me had not changed at all. The funeral was held at a small chapel with pale walls and flower arrangements that smelled too sweet. I stood near the back at first, clutching the folded program in my hand. I saw my mother across the room before she saw me. She looked older, tired. Her lipstick was too dark for the occasion, but otherwise she looked exactly like herself. Controlled, put together, busy accepting sympathy. For one sharp second, an old reflex rose in me. The urge to go to her, to make it easier, to be the daughter who stepped in and helped carry the emotional weight. Then I remembered the empty row at graduation, the backyard photo, my grandmother's quiet note. The reflex passed. The service itself was brief and gentle, just like my grandmother would have wanted. Stories were told. Hymns were sung softly. People cried. I cried too. For her, for myself, for all the moments she had tried to stand between me and my mother's blind spots, and all the times she had not known she was being lied to. After the burial, everyone gathered at my grandmother's house. It smelled the same. Tea, furniture polish, old books, and the faint trace of cinnamon from the cookies she used to bake. The familiarity nearly knocked the breath out of me. Relatives stood around the living room with paper plates and cups, talking in low voices. "She had such a hard year," one aunt was saying about my mother. Between Ethan's troubles and Claire leaving the way she did, another person sighed. "Linda told us Claire didn't even want a ceremony. Some kids are just private, I guess." I stepped into the doorway. "That's not what happened," I said. The room went still. My mother turned first. Her face changed so quickly I could actually see it happen. Surprise, then panic, then something like anger trying to gather itself. "Claire," she said, "this is not the time." "When is the time?" I asked. No one answered. I walked to the coffee table and set down the folder I had brought. "Grandma left money for my education and graduation," I said. "She trusted you with it. And you spent it on Ethan. She thought I didn't want anyone at my ceremony because you told her that." A murmur moved through the room. My uncle frowned. "Linda?" My mother lifted her chin. "This is not the whole story." "Then tell it," I said. She looked at me with that familiar expression, not the one that always tried to make me feel unreasonable before I had even finished speaking. So I kept going. "These are the account records," I said, opening the folder. "These are Grandma's instructions, and these are the withdrawals." I laid the pages out one by one. Then I took out my phone and connected it to the television in the corner of the living room. A slideshow began. I had made it the night before. There was no music, just images. Me in my graduation gown, standing alone after the ceremony. The empty hall. The selfie I took in the parking lot because there was no one else there. Then the pictures from the backyard that same afternoon. My mother laughing beside the grill. Ethan with his friends. The cheap congratulations banner hanging over a party that had never been mine. The room stayed silent except for the soft click of the screen changing images. "While I was walking across the stage alone," I said, "this is where my mother was." My aunt covered her mouth. My mother's face went pale. "You are humiliating me at your grandmother's funeral." "No," I said. "I am correcting the lie." I turned to the room, to all of them, because this was no longer only about her. "She told you I didn't want anyone there," I said. "She told Grandma that too. But I wanted my family at my graduation. I reminded them. I called. I waited. And while I was there alone, she was throwing a party for my brother." My brother, standing near the wall until then, shifted uncomfortably. He would not meet my eyes. One of my cousins looked at him, then back at my mother. "Is that true?" she asked softly. My mother laughed, but it sounded brittle and thin. "Claire always exaggerates," she said. "She left without even telling us where she was going. She made this all much bigger than it needed to be." "Did I?" I asked. I reached into my folder one more time and pulled out another set of papers. "These are the forms removing you from every part of my adult life," I said to her. "Emergency contact, beneficiary, medical records, employment files. I already filed the paperwork to change my last name to Grandma's maiden name." The room reacted before she did. Small gasps, a dropped cup, someone whispering my name. My mother just stared. For the first time in my life, she looked like she did not know which version of the story to tell. "This is insane," she said at last. "You are doing this for revenge." I thought about it. Maybe some part of it was revenge, not the loud kind, not the kind that throws dishes or screams, something colder, more exact. But it was also survival. "It's protection," I said. "I'm done letting you decide who I am in your story." My mother's face crumpled then, but I did not move toward her. For years, I had mistaken her tears for proof that she cared. Sometimes people cry because they are sorry. Sometimes they cry because they are losing control. I knew the difference now. I looked around the living room one last time, at the old framed family pictures lining the wall, at the holidays and birthdays and smiling versions of us. I noticed, really noticed, how often I was at the edge of every frame. Not missing, just not centered, not chosen. At the door, I paused and turned back. "Goodbye, Mom," I said. "I hope someday when you tell people your daughter disappeared, you also tell them that you taught her how." Then I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Back in Seattle, everything looked the same. The same train platform, the same little grocery store under Maya's building, the same dent in the couch cushion where I always sat with my laptop. But I was not the same. The confrontation replayed in my head for days. Not because I regretted it, because I did not. That was what surprised me most. For the first time, I had said exactly what needed to be said. No softening, no shrinking, no trying to protect her from the truth. The name change paperwork took months, but filing it felt like crossing a bridge. Slowly, officially, I became Claire Hayes, my grandmother's family name. The first time I saw it printed on an official document, something inside me settled. At the bank, the woman helping me asked, "Any family member you'd like to list here?" "No," I said. At the doctor's office, I wrote Maya's name under emergency contact and left the family section blank. At work, I updated my records. At every step, I removed my mother, not with one dramatic act, but with many small, deliberate ones. That was the real erasing, not fire, not screaming, paperwork, silence, choice. One evening, Maya found me sitting on the floor with old notebooks, photographs, and birthday cards spread around me. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm sorting," I said. I made 2 piles. The first was for what still felt like mine, notes from professors, cards from friends, a recipe in my grandmother's handwriting, ticket stubs. Photos of me laughing for real. The second was for what only reminded me how often I had been an extra in my own life. Family pictures centered around Ethan, photos from events where I'd clearly been forgotten until the last second, cards from my mother signed with love, but somehow always about what I should do next for the family. I did not destroy the second pile. I put it in a box, I taped it shut, then I slid it to the back of my closet. Not erased from history, just removed from daily reach. Do you ever worry you'll regret this? Maya asked quietly. I took a long time answering. Yes, I said. But I also regret every year I waited for her to become someone else. At some point, you just choose which regret you can live with. Life kept moving after that because life always does. Work got busier. I led my first full project. I made new friends. I laughed more. Sometimes I even went whole days without thinking about my mother at all. Then one afternoon, an email slipped through my filters. The subject line was just my name. No hello, no apology, no how are you. She wrote that she had heard about the name change. She wrote that the family was worried about me. She wrote that she hoped I would come to my senses and remember where I belong. I read it twice. I waited for guilt, for anger, for that old collapsing feeling in my chest. What came instead was a strange calm. I thought about the graduation hall, the backyard party, my grandmother's note, the money, the lies. Then I opened a reply and typed one sentence. I remember exactly where I belong, and it is not in a life where I am treated like I do not matter. Or I stared at the sentence for a while. Then I deleted it. Some truths do not need to be sent to remain true. I archived her email, reset the filter, and went back to work. People think revenge is always loud. They think it looks like shouting, public scenes, broken things. But sometimes revenge is quieter than that. Sometimes it is simply refusing to be available for someone else's false version of you. Sometimes it is changing your name, your forms, your future. Sometimes it is building a life so fully your own that the people who once took you for granted can no longer reach you through the old doors. I did not erase my mother because I wanted to pretend she had never existed. I erased her from the places where she no longer had the right to stand. There is a difference. Even now, sometimes late at night, I think about the girl I was that morning, standing outside the graduation hall, checking her phone over and over, still believing love would arrive if she waited long enough. I feel tenderness for her, and grief, because she had not yet learned that some empty seats stay empty. She had not yet learned that being overlooked often starts as a pattern long before it becomes a single unforgettable moment. She had not yet learned that leaving is not always abandonment. Sometimes leaving is the first honest thing you do. Do I still wonder what my mother tells people now? Of course I do. Maybe she says I changed. Maybe she says I became cold. Maybe she says I overreacted and drifted away. But her version of events does not control my life anymore. That is the freedom. I still carry scars from the daughter who stood on that stage searching the crowd for a face that never came. But I also carry something stronger now. A life where my worth is not measured by how convenient I am. A life where love looks like showing up. A life where I do not have to beg to be seen. So if you ask me whether disappearing was too harsh, whether changing my name and cutting every official thread was too much, I would tell you this. What would you have done? Would you have kept waiting in that hall for a mother who chose a party over your one hard-earned moment? Would you have gone on making excuses for a person who kept rewriting your pain into something smaller, easier, less inconvenient for her? Or would you have walked out, closed the door behind you, and finally stopped handing your story to someone who never cared enough to hold it gently? I know what I chose, and for the first time in my life, I know I chose myself.